Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. We are back talking about leaders as coaches, and leadership is hard and we all need coaching, even if we're just leading from within at home, right? We have a very special guest here, Kim, the legend and the founder of Frame of Mind Coaching and the Journal That Talks Back. We've heard a little bit about the Journal That Talks Back. I think that's so cool. You have that trademarked?
We have Frame of Mind Coaching trademarked and the Journal That Talks Back. So the Journal That Talks Back is for young professionals, whereas Frame of Mind Coaching is for executives. With the Journal That Talks Back, we have the ability to journal with their coach as often as they want, whereas with Frame of Mind Coaching, it's an executive level coaching experience. But, you know, they go hand in hand. They work very well together.
Talk to me a little bit about, again, about how leaders need coaching. Like, aren't they the expert? Why would they need coaching?
Well, leaders may be subject matter experts, but they're not necessarily leadership experts, and they're not necessarily human experts. And, you know, yes, they should be theoretically the experts on themselves. But what we see is that leaders typically have blind spots, and they're not aware of the way they're thinking impacts their behaviors and therefore their outcomes, right? Yeah. It's just amazing. I'll give you a perfect example, okay? A great example. As I mentioned before, I do a lot of speaking, and every time I speak, I ask for a volunteer. Doesn't matter if it's a room of 10 people or a room of 1,000 people. It doesn't really matter. I ask for a volunteer. How many volunteers do you think I get?
None.
Yeah, I get very few. Sometimes, you know, after a delay, I get one poor soul who feels sorry for me and says, okay, I'll go. Right? That's what happens. And so, you know, I bring them up. I do an exercise with them. The exercise isn't so important, but then I do a bit of a debrief. And the debrief I say is like, okay, so why are you here? Why did you come to this event? To learn something, right? And what's the best place to learn from? By coming on stage and doing. And how many of you jumped at the opportunity to do it? One?
Right.
Why is that? Because every single one of you, all of us, we have a dialogue that runs in our heads. And that dialogue says, I'm not going up. I don't know what she wants from me. I don't want to look like a fool. I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm just going to sit here and wait and see what happens. And they're not even conscious of that dialogue. But that dialogue goes on 24/7. Well, even when you're sleeping, sort of, just gets quieter, right? But that dialogue is going on all the time. And that dialogue runs the show. And so my job is to say, okay, like, so what is your dialogue saying? What is that conversation in your head? Because that conversation in your head isn't always serving you. That conversation in your head often leads you away from where you really want to be. So let's look at that conversation.
Yeah, and then take it out of your head and make it real.
Exactly. That is why we ask our clients to journal in an online journal. Why? Because then they write their conversation on well, not on paper, but online. And we can see it. We can see how they think about different things in different circumstances in different relationships. And that helps us understand how sometimes that dialogue is sabotaging them, is bringing them away from where they want to be.
Yeah, it sounds like, you know, the journaling and then, of course, the coaching sessions, it really gives these leaders who may be subject matter experts for years, but gives them a fresh perspective of just dealing with other human beings. And we often just need that. We need to grab the mirror and say, I need help, and I might be part of the problem.
Well, and the very cool part about coaching is one of the magical things that happens is that we help people see that very often they are trying to take responsibility for things that they simply can't succeed at. And we are also showing them how to take responsibility for the things that they must take responsibility for, the things that are theirs to own. So, for example, again, I'm going to use this as an example, a marriage situation. So many times let's say a wife or a husband tries to take responsibility for their spouse's happiness. Well, I'm trying to make her happy. And I say, that's not your job. That is not your job. Your job is to show up in the relationship happy. And they're like, what? I don't understand, right? And so it's really interesting. We literally take off this burden of responsibility that they've been carrying for so long. And we say, stop doing that. It's not your job. It's not your role. You will never succeed. But here, this is your responsibility. Start working on this.
It's such a powerful introspective, and it's a one-on-one type process. It's not a group session type thing or anything like that, Kim, right? I mean, this is that leader with someone from you or your team, right?
Right. So mostly we do one-on-one coaching. Periodically, we do group coaching. Sometimes we'll have, let's say, a company who says, well, I want you to coach, all of my VPs, and we do that in group format as well. So
but the fascinating part, though, that you bring out is that even in the group persona like that, if you're still journaling, if this is still the crux of what we're doing, it's that introspective look, it's that personal aptitude, the importance of emotional intelligence. Where does this sit within your framework in life? Not your neighbor's thoughts, not the person that you lean on in the C-suite who's in charge of finance. No, your thoughts. It's strong. It's strong.
It's exactly that. It's how is your thinking impacting everything you see, hear, taste, and touch, and smell? How is it impacting you? And
it sounds to me like a lot of self-awareness, a lot of, learning about how you listen, and then how you listen to yourself and that little brain going, you're wrong or you're not enough. And as leaders, we have to run around all day building everybody else up. And I think we forget to go, hey, I need help too. Somebody needs to help me right now, because it is hard. 2023 is not getting any easier. The past few years have killed us.
Past few and this year isn't getting any easier either. It's true. The economy is killing everybody. But here's the interesting thing. If we think about leaders, business owners, they make investments, they make decisions to make investments, and it's easy for them to make, let's say, a marketing investment or a financial investment or a piece of equipment investment. But they find it much harder to make an investment in themselves. And that blows my mind. Like, hey, leader, you are the most significant influencer in this organization. It's super important that you invest in that.
Right. Yeah. To reduce that turnover that we mentioned in our first or second episode of executives coming and going because they get burnt out because they didn't get the support that they needed. In our last episode that's coming up here, I want to talk a little bit about the leaders as a coach. So leaders going through being coached, and now when they come out the end, how do they take those skills and use it to coach people on their team, either through your services or on their own? So we will be back in a moment.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.